There comes a moment in every seeker's life where the outer world stops being enough. No matter how much you achieve, how much you collect, how many experiences you gather, something feels incomplete. The victories are sweet, but the sweetness fades. The applause of others grows quiet. The possessions gather dust. And even the most profound external successes cannot silence the question echoing inside. Who am I really? Most people bury that question. They distract themselves with routines, with entertainment, with endless goals. They become actors in their own lives, performing roles, repeating lines, following scripts written by family, culture, and society. But beneath it all, their soul whispers the truth. This isn't the whole story. There's more. You've forgotten. And that forgetting, that amnesia of the soul, isn't an accident. It is part of the design. From the moment you were born, you were conditioned into a world that told you what to think, who to be, and how to behave. Layers of identity were placed upon you: student, worker, partner, parent, citizen. Layer by layer, the noise of the world buried the memory of who you really are. The ancient traditions had a word for this forgetting. They called it the Great Sleep. And they knew that most human beings would never wake up from it. Because awakening requires something forbidden, something you will never be taught in schools, something not written in textbooks, something hidden beneath layers of distraction. That forbidden technique is not about learning something new. It is about remembering something ancient. It is about piercing through the illusions you've been trained to believe and reconnecting with the part of you that has never been broken, never been small, never been lost. The world doesn't want you to remember this. Why? Because the moment you do, you can no longer be controlled by fear. You can no longer be manipulated by scarcity. You can no longer be confined by the roles that were forced upon you. A soul that remembers itself is untouchable. And so, this truth was buried, hidden, and disguised. Because if too many people woke up, the very structures of power in this world would collapse. But here you are, listening, feeling, and perhaps, for the first time, sensing that something inside you is stirring. So, what is this forbidden technique? Let us approach it carefully. Because if I simply gave it to you as words, your mind would reduce it to information. You would treat it like another concept, another idea, another piece of knowledge to file away. But this isn't about information, it's about transformation. Imagine for a moment that your soul is like a vast library. Every lifetime you've ever lived, every lesson you've ever learned, every truth you've ever discovered is written in those books. But when you came into this life, you entered through a veil of forgetting. It is as if the lights in that library went out. The books are still there, waiting for you, but you cannot see them. The forbidden technique is the act of lighting a single candle in that vast, dark library. And as the flame grows, one by one, the shelves reveal themselves again. Pages open, knowledge returns, and you begin to remember, not as an idea, but as a living truth pulsing in your very being. This technique is not complicated. In fact, its simplicity is why so few people believe in it. Because the human mind craves complexity. It wants a ritual, a formula, a grand ceremony. It wants something it can grasp with logic. But the soul doesn't speak in logic. The soul speaks in vibration, in presence, in resonance. And here lies the first step, silence. Not silence as in no sound, but silence as in turning down the noise of the external world long enough to hear the quiet song of your own being. When was the last time you truly sat without distraction? No phone, no conversation, no music, no agenda. For most people, the answer is almost never. The world trains you to be addicted to noise, because in silence, memory awakens. But silence alone is not enough. The forbidden technique requires a second element, truth. And truth here does not mean facts. It means authenticity, the courage to remove the masks you wear, even from yourself. It means daring to ask, what do I actually feel? What do I actually want? Who am I beneath the expectations of others? Most people never ask those questions because they are afraid of the answers. And so they live their entire lives pretending to be someone they're not. But if you want your soul to remember, you must choose truth over pretense. You must allow yourself to see the ways you've betrayed yourself, the ways you've silenced your own heart, the ways you've played roles that were never yours to play. And once silence and truth come together, something begins to shift. You may notice it in subtle ways at first. Flashes of intuition, moments of clarity, dreams that feel too vivid to ignore. You may find yourself drawn to places, people, or ideas that feel strangely familiar, as if you've known them forever. This is your soul stirring, reaching through the layers of forgetfulness, trying to remind you of what you already know. The forbidden technique, then, is not a single action. It is a state of being. It is the act of clearing away the false, so the true can emerge. It is a discipline of remembrance. And once you taste it, even for a moment, you cannot go back to sleep fully again. The memory may fade at times, the noise may return, but the spark has been lit. And that spark will continue to call you deeper. Here's the paradox. Remembering who you are does not make life easier. It makes life real. The illusions that once comforted you fall away. The distractions that once numbed you lose their power. The roles that once defined you crumble. And while that may feel unsettling, it is also the beginning of freedom. Because when the false dissolves, only the true remains. And what is that truth? That you are not merely this body, this name, this story. You are not the roles you play, nor the masks you wear. You are not your successes or your failures, your possessions or your losses. You are something vaster, something eternal, something that cannot be reduced to words. The forbidden technique is simply this, remembering, not as a thought, but as a lived reality. And the moment you begin to remember, your entire world begins to shift. The fears that once held you shrink. The boundaries that once defined you expand. And the longing that once haunted you dissolves into recognition. I was never lost. I only forgot. There is something deeply unsettling about realizing that most of what we call life is an elaborate forgetting. You wake up each day to routines, to obligations, to screens filled with moving images and words that pull your focus outward. But beneath the surface of all of that, there is an echo, an ancient whisper tugging at your awareness. It is not the whisper of society, nor the demands of the world. It is something older, deeper, something that belongs to you but is rarely heard. This is where the forbidden technique begins, not with a grand ceremony, not with chanting or secret symbols, but with the recognition that your soul has been sending signals all along. The problem is not that you've lacked them. The problem is that the noise of the world has been drowning them out. Imagine a violin playing in a crowded marketplace. Its melody is delicate, trembling with beauty, yet the surrounding clamor, the shouting, the clinking of coins, the chatter of voices, swallows it whole. The forbidden technique is not about forcing the violin to play louder. It is about silencing the marketplace inside your mind, so the melody can finally be heard. But this silence is not the usual kind you think of. It is not sitting in a quiet room with nothing happening. No, the silence here is a shift, a decision to pull your attention inward, to withdraw from the endless tug-of-war of external distractions. The moment you do, the faint notes of your soul begin to surface. The soul does not speak to you in sentences. It speaks in impressions, in flashes of feeling, in sensations that ripple through your body without explanation. Have you ever walked into a room and felt an inexplicable heaviness? Or met someone who made you feel at ease without knowing why? Those are not accidents. They are glimpses of your deeper memory trying to surface. The forbidden technique requires you to begin decoding these subtle signals. It is less about thinking and more about sensing. You become a listener, not to your thoughts, but to the subtle vibrations beneath them. It is like learning to read music not by analyzing notes, but by feeling the swell of the sound move through you. When you start paying attention, you realize the soul is constantly communicating. That flicker of unease when you say yes to something you didn't want. That surge of lightness when you do something aligned with your true path. Those are breadcrumbs leading you back to who you really are. Another entry point lies in dreams. Most people dismiss dreams as random fragments, meaningless flashes of imagination. But the forbidden traditions saw them differently. Dreams are a theater where your soul speaks in images instead of words. Think of a dream you once had that stayed with you for years. It might not have made logical sense, yet something about it haunted you, as though it carried a message. That is because dreams bypass the filters of your waking mind and deliver raw truth in symbolic form. In the forbidden technique, you treat dreams not as entertainment, but as maps. Each dream becomes a coded reminder, a reflection of what your deeper self is trying to communicate. The flying dream, the falling dream, the endless staircases, the sudden encounters with strangers who feel familiar. These are not accidents. They are the language of remembrance. By writing them down, by sitting with them, by feeling into the emotions they evoke, you begin piecing together a puzzle far greater than your waking life allows. You begin to see the story your soul has been trying to tell you all along. Perhaps the most radical part of the forbidden technique is this. It disrupts habit. Habit is the greatest anesthetic. It dulls the mind, numbs the heart, and covers over the whispers of the soul with endless repetition. Think about how most days unfold. You wake, you follow routines, you repeat patterns so ingrained you don't even notice them anymore. But here is the secret. Your soul cannot break through when you are lost in repetition. It needs disruption. The forbidden technique deliberately interrupts your patterns. It asks you to do something unpredictable, something that jolts you out of automatic living. It might be walking a different path home, sleeping under the stars for one night, turning off every device for 24 hours, or speaking aloud words you've never dared to say. These interruptions may seem small, but they are cracks in the facade of habit, cracks where the light of memory begins to leak through. Your soul remembers through disruption. When the ordinary is broken, the extraordinary slips in. Another revelation of this technique is that what we call time is one of the greatest illusions binding us. You believe in past, present, and future as separate, but your soul does not. It exists beyond that division. It remembers what your waking mind has forgotten. Think of déjà vu, that eerie sense of having lived a moment before. Or the way a song from childhood can suddenly transport you into an emotional state so vivid it feels like no time has passed at all. These are glimpses of timelessness. They are cracks where memory bleeds across the boundaries of what you call time. The forbidden technique teaches you to lean into these moments. Instead of dismissing them, you explore them, asking, "What is my soul reminding me of right now? What memory lies beneath this sensation?" When you follow this thread, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel that your life is not unfolding linearly, step by step, but is more like a vast tapestry where every thread is already connected. The present moment becomes more than just now. It becomes the convergence point where past memory and future possibility collide, revealing who you are beneath the surface. Finally, the forbidden technique leads you to the deepest layer, the voice beneath the noise. Not the voice of thought, not the inner chatter that argues, doubts, and distracts. No, this voice is quieter, steadier, older. It speaks less in words and more in clarity. You will recognize it not because it is loud, but because it feels immovable. When it speaks, It feels like truth that requires no defense. It may come in the form of a knowing that you cannot explain, or a decision that feels inevitable without needing justification. That is your soul speaking. The more you practice, the more this voice begins to cut through the noise. And with it comes remembrance. You realize that you are not lost, that you never were. You were simply distracted. The soul has been here all along, whispering, waiting, guiding. This is why it is called forbidden. Because once you hear that voice, once you follow it, you no longer fit neatly into the world as it has been constructed. You no longer buy into every demand, every distraction, every false promise of fulfillment. You have touched something deeper, something that cannot be bought, controlled, or silenced. The world prefers you forget. But this technique forces remembrance. And once you remember, you cannot unsee. You begin to walk differently. Decisions shift. Relationships feel different. Life itself reveals hidden corridors you never knew existed. And at every step, your soul becomes louder, clearer, more undeniable. That is the forbidden path. That is the beginning of the return. Up until now, the forbidden technique has been whispering, nudging, showing glimpses through sensation, dreams, disruption, and the timeless crack between moments. This is where remembrance shifts from possibility into activation. Think of it like standing before a locked door. For years, you felt its presence, seen faint light glowing from beneath the crack, but never dared to turn the handle. You were told the door should remain closed, that behind it lies danger, fantasy, or madness. But here you are, hand outstretched. The forbidden technique is nothing less than the act of opening that door. Most people live in a trance. Their eyes are open, their mouths speak, their hands work, but underneath it all, they are hypnotized. Hypnotized by repetition, by screens, by endless narratives projected into their minds. The trance convinces them that this version of reality, the bills, the stress, the 9 to 5, the expectations, is all there is. The forbidden technique begins by breaking the trance. And it does so not through force, but through deliberate interruption. Consider this: when lightning splits the sky in the middle of a dark storm, there is a brief moment where everything is revealed. The trees, the horizon, the roads, the hidden shapes. That flash of illumination is disruptive, startling, undeniable. The technique works the same way. By deliberately doing what your usual patterns resist, you create a lightning strike inside your own awareness. Something as simple as walking into the wilderness without your phone, or fasting for a day, or staying awake through the night, not as an act of suffering but as an act of breaking rhythm, can become a lightning bolt. The mind, stripped of its ordinary comforts, stops sleepwalking. It begins to listen. And when it listens, memory stirs. Most imagine memory lives only in the brain, but the forbidden knowledge insists otherwise. The body is a living archive, carrying imprints of every forgotten truth. Notice how your body reacts when you enter certain places. Sometimes a shiver, sometimes a heaviness in your chest, sometimes a surge of warmth. These are not random. They are fragments of memory encoded in muscle, in breath, in heartbeat. The technique teaches you to scan your body the way an archaeologist brushes dust from ancient ruins. Slowly, carefully, you bring attention to sensation. You close your eyes, breathe, and feel. Where is there tension? Where is there openness? What images rise when you stay with the sensation instead of running from it? It is in this still observation that memory unfolds. Perhaps you place a hand on your chest and suddenly a forgotten childhood image surfaces. Or you sit in silence and feel waves of grief with no obvious source, as though mourning something lost long ago. That is not random emotion. It is the soul's archive opening, releasing fragments of the truth you have buried. To remember, the soul often requires a trigger. something that bypasses the analytical mind and awakens recognition. In ancient traditions, symbols were not mere decorations. They were keys. A spiral carved into stone, a circle drawn in sand, a pattern woven into cloth. These were not arbitrary designs. They were activators. To gaze upon them was to awaken something buried inside, something that recognized itself in the shape. Even now, you may encounter a symbol that inexplicably stirs you. Maybe it's a piece of sacred geometry, or a constellation of stars, or a pattern in nature that feels hauntingly familiar. That stirring is not coincidence. It is recognition. The forbidden technique encourages you to gather the symbols that awaken you, not because of their intellectual meaning, but because of their resonance. Place them where you can see them. Draw them. Trace them. Let them soak into your awareness until they are no longer outside of you, but inside, living again. If vision awakens, then sound anchors. And one of the most powerful activators of remembrance is vibration. Have you ever heard a piece of music that moved you to tears for reasons you could not explain? Or a chant, a bell, a drumbeat that seemed to bypass thought and go directly into your chest? That is not just emotion. That is remembrance vibrating awake. The forbidden technique makes deliberate use of sound. Not just listening passively, but consciously exposing yourself to tones, chants, or even natural sounds like rushing water or wind through trees, until your body begins to resonate. You hum. You chant. You allow your own voice, raw and unpolished, to join the vibration. And in that sound, you feel something ancient rising, a pulse you've carried since the beginning, the voice of the soul finding its frequency again. Every practice leads to a single point, the shattering moment. This is the threshold where remembrance ceases to be conceptual and becomes undeniable. It often arrives unexpectedly. You may be walking, listening to the sound of rain, when suddenly a flood of memory overtakes you. You see flashes of lives you've lived, or feel an overwhelming recognition that you are far more than this single identity. Or you may be in meditation when the noise of thought collapses, and in the quiet aftermath you hear it, the voice beneath the noise, clear, steady, impossible to deny. This moment feels like glass breaking. The world remains the same, yet entirely different. You remember not just with your mind, but with your whole being. You remember that you are not just existing, you are vast, ancient, woven into the fabric of all things. And once that glass has shattered, you cannot unbreak it. But here lies the reason this technique has always been called forbidden. With remembrance comes responsibility. When you truly remember, you cannot pretend to be asleep. You cannot continue following the world's illusions with the same blind obedience. You feel the falseness of certain paths, the emptiness of certain pursuits, the hollow ring of distractions once disguised as purpose. This can be disorienting. Relationships may shift. Goals may dissolve. You may feel out of place in a world still lost in forgetting. But this is not punishment. This is purification. What falls away is what was never truly yours. And what remains, the clarity, the voice, the undeniable knowing, becomes the foundation of who you truly are. Activation is not a single moment, but a series of them. Each time you interrupt the trance, each time you decode sensation, each time you resonate with a symbol or sound, you open another layer of memory. The process is endless, a spiral of remembrance drawing you closer to your core. And the more you remember, the more your life transforms. Synchronicities multiply. Paths open. The world seems to bend around you, not because you control it, but because you are finally in resonance with it. This is the essence of the forbidden technique. Remembrance leading to alignment, alignment leading to transformation. Not once, not temporarily, but continuously. Because once the door is open, it does not close again. Remembrance, once activated, cannot remain an inner secret. It demands embodiment. It demands expression. Imagine a hidden spring that has been blocked for years. Once you break the rock and the water begins to flow, you cannot stop it from finding channels, from nourishing the earth, from reshaping the land. The same is true for remembrance. Once the soul awakens, it reshapes how you move through the world. The forbidden technique has shown you how to awaken memory. But this awakening is only half the journey. The other half is integration, learning to live with the truth you now carry. Integration feels like walking out of a dark cave into sudden sunlight. At first, your eyes hurt. The brightness overwhelms you. You squint, stumble, want to run back into the shadows. But if you stay, if you let your eyes adjust, you realize the brilliance was not there to blind you. It was there to reveal. This is the challenge of embodiment. The memories rise, the truth returns, and now you must hold it in a world that is still half asleep. When remembrance dawns, you become a kind of translator. You carry messages from a deeper reality into this one. And like any translator, your task is not only to understand but to express clearly, without distortion. You might not speak in sacred words or mystical tones. Instead, your life itself becomes the translation. The way you listen differently, the way you choose differently, the way you carry an invisible presence that others feel even if they cannot explain it. This is embodiment, when remembrance stops being a private vision and starts radiating through your ordinary moments. Here is what no one tells you. Remembrance carries a disruptive quality. Think of a tuning fork struck against a surface. When it vibrates, anything out of harmony around it begins to shake. Your soul, awakened, becomes that tuning fork. Environments, conversations, even entire lifestyles that once felt normal may now feel unbearable. The frequency of your remembrance exposes what does not align. At first, this can be unsettling. You may feel as though your life is unraveling. But this unraveling is not destruction. It is clearing. It is the old scaffolding falling away so the true structure can emerge. To embody remembrance, you must walk through the valley of solitude. Not because you will be alone forever, but because at first, few will understand. The masses live under the spell of forgetting. And when someone awakens, it unsettles them. They may resist you, dismiss you, or even ridicule you. This is not cruelty, it is defense. They are defending their trance. The forbidden technique demands courage here. To keep walking, to keep embodying, even when the crowd does not approve. Because in time, your remembrance will not just serve you, it will serve them too. Your presence will become a reminder, a silent invitation for others to awaken when they are ready. When remembrance settles into embodiment, something extraordinary happens. The soul begins to radiate. It is not dramatic. You don't glow in the literal sense. But people feel it. They may tell you that your presence calms them, or inspires them, or stirs something in them they can't explain. Strangers may open to you, revealing their deepest stories. Animals may draw closer. Children may sense your energy and feel safe. This radiance is not forced. It is not performance. It is simply the natural byproduct of living aligned with who you really are. Imagine a lamp covered by layers of dust and cloth. For years, the light has been hidden. The forbidden technique is the act of removing those coverings, one by one. And once the coverings are gone, the lamp doesn't need to try to shine. It shines because shining is its nature. When your soul remembers, you begin to navigate life by a different compass. No longer driven solely by survival, approval, or fear of loss, you are guided by resonance. This compass is subtle. It speaks in sensations, in small pulls, in gentle knowing. You may find yourself walking away from an opportunity that looks perfect on paper because something inside says, "Not this." Or you may feel drawn to something that makes no logical sense, but the pull is undeniable. Following this compass is an act of trust. At first, it feels risky, like walking across a bridge you cannot see. But the more you follow it, the more you realize it always leads you exactly where you need to be. Embodiment is never just personal. It ripples. When you embody remembrance, your choices affect not only you but everyone around you. A single act of integrity can inspire a chain of courage. A single moment of presence can calm a storm in another's heart. A single refusal to compromise your truth can spark the remembrance in someone else who was on the edge of waking. The forbidden technique was never about selfish enlightenment. It was about becoming a beacon. Not a savior, not a teacher perched above others, but a living reminder that they too carry the same hidden memory. Even in embodiment, there is one danger: forgetting again. Forgetting can creep back in through comfort, distraction, or despair. It can lure you back into the trance of the world. But once you have remembered, forgetting will never feel the same. It will itch at you, gnaw at you, whisper reminders until you cannot ignore it. The technique teaches vigilance, not fear, but awareness. Daily acts of remembrance keep you anchored. A breath taken consciously, a symbol gazed upon, a moment of silence, a tone hummed. These small acts keep the channel open. The forbidden technique was never about learning something new. It was about unveiling what was always there. About remembering that you are not broken, not incomplete, not waiting for worthiness. You are ancient. You are vast. You are a fragment of eternity disguised as a human life. And when you embody this remembrance, the world itself begins to mirror it back to you. The trees feel alive again. The stars speak. Time bends. Life stops being a maze of confusion and becomes a dance of synchronicity. This is the gift and the weight of remembrance. You are no longer lost in the noise. You are no longer chasing false identities. You are no longer asleep. You are awake. And once awake, the soul cannot return to silence. It sings, irradiates, remembers. And that remembrance, embodied, alive, unstoppable, is the forbidden technique's final gift.